very honored today to have Rhonda Sterrett from i360 Group joining us. Is going to talk about planning and pricing out an e-commerce website. And I'll pay particular attention because Rhonda is probably one of the preeminent e-commerce experts in the North Atlanta area. And we are just going to get a lot of knowledge laid on us right now. So thank you so much. Let's welcome Rhonda.
I'm going to move kind of fast. I want to allow time for questions at the end. And I first want to start with, this is for both clients and developers. I'm not going to try to pigeon it one way or the other. I did speak in Asheville last year with Daniel, and mine was more on just the developer side, but I want to kind of go both angles with this, because I think it's important to understand kind of where some of the store owners are coming from. Because I have a lot of store owners contacting me very frustrated with the solutions the developers have left them with. So there's kind of two sides of the issue. First, I want to generically, and most people don't realize how in-depth e-commerce is, but just in general, e-commerce is conducting transactions electronically on the internet. That could be buying physical products, a t-shirt, whatever you're selling. It could be virtual products, downloading an ebook for a subscription, things like that. It could be tickets to an event, and it could be membership subscriptions. All of those are considered e-commerce. And one of the biggest kind of hurdles I see when I'm kind of brought into a project is I see many developers overthinking what's needed for that solution. I've seen many times where it's complex e-commerce, WooCommerce setup, and all they needed was a Gravity form plug-in with a payment. And that would have solved the issue and the client would have been happy. So you need to kind of first understand what is needed and the scope of the project before you can actually pick. We're going to talk mostly about WooCommerce today, but there are other ways to kind of skin the cat, per se, depending on what the client's requirements are. And I'm just going to go over some quick e-commerce statistics. Online spending in the U.S. in 2017, what they're figuring is 385 to 440 billion. The numbers aren't in yet. That's a lot out there. And this accounted for only 8% of the total sales in the U.S. So guess what? It's growing by leaps and bounds because more and more people want to stay home and order and have it delivered like the Amazon kind of model. But the problem is, us as developers, I'm talking to a developer at this point, we need to be prepared to do these e-commerce sites properly so that the store owners aren't frustrated and that we can also make money on the project. So it's a two-way street. And the goal is to always look at the business need first. We kind of built our business on that, first looking at the business need and then fitting them into the model. And again, thinking outside the box. Really figuring out, before you say every e-commerce site needs WooCommerce, or before you say everything needs a membership plugin, whatever it needs, trying to figure out what's needed and architect the solution to fit that need. And it may, again, include Gravity forms with a payment option. It may be a membership plugin, or we're going to talk mostly about WooCommerce, but WooCommerce, and there's also other e-commerce within WordPress. WooCommerce is probably the more robust one out there with more options on it that I probably use the most. I probably use the most of Gravity forms, MemberPress, and WooCommerce when I'm creating an e-commerce solution. And then here's just, again, if somebody comes to you with e-commerce, you're going to get hit with a lot of different terms. This is just very generic. About the market right now, about 40% is other. That may be a custom solution, some commercial thing. HubSpot has some e-commerce, other things. WooCommerce comprises about 29% of the market. Squarespace about 15%, Magento 6%, and Shopify 4%. I've built sites in pretty much all of these. Magento is probably the most expensive and the most expensive ongoing. There's also Drupal, and that's kind of in that other platform. Again, just depends on what they're used to and wanting.
Have you done any Squarespace? Yeah.
Yes, it was very limited. The client wanted additional specs, and we couldn't accommodate it because Squarespace didn't have the functionality. Yeah. For the right market, it's perfect because they handle the maintenance, they handle everything. But it has to, again, fit that business model, and they have to know the limitations walking into it, that you can't have this feature that you want, or you can't have this feature. And it sometimes causes problems. And again, walking in, this is where I see the biggest issue when I get pulled into a site. Developers don't know what questions to ask. They come up with a proposal. They think it's just take a payment, buy a product, and the store owners don't know what questions and information to give, so there's a huge disconnect, huge. I see many projects come and shipping hasn't been determined, sales tax hasn't been determined, product options haven't been determined. We'll go over some of that. And what happens is developers get really frustrated because all of a sudden the project scope has increased, and now they're realizing they're not going to make money on the project. And the store owners are going, why wasn't this all told to me up front? So it becomes a huge disconnect. So again, getting everybody on the same page and walking through things really helps. And then to close the disconnect, I love this quote: the ability to ask the right question is more than half the battle of finding the answer, by Thomas Watson. Does anybody know who Thomas Watson is?
Not the golfer.
A good dad.
Founder of IBM.
Yes, he was and he built IBM kind of with this philosophy, just asking the right questions, listening, and getting the right answers. And again, the big thing, and I'm kind of a system architect from years ago, so again, learning the business flow of that business to create the right estimate up front. Part of that is, and this, when I get into these, you're going to be like, why do I need to know all this if you're a developer? And it's going to open your eyes, because it's going to make you understand what's happening in that business so that you can understand the flow of the e-commerce, because it's more than just somebody coming to a site, buying a product. There's a customer side, there's a store owner side, there may be a warehousing side, etc. But what happens from the time the shop owner receives the products until they're entered on the web? I recently did one where I went to their warehouse and I watched the process, and I realized they put products in the same widget, you call it, in 3 different areas of the warehouse. And the warehouse people were like, if you can create something, can you make it so it's a lot easier on us? Because they didn't know where it was stored. So what we did is we built some custom fields into WooCommerce for them where they can store what bins the products are. And then we eventually went back in and put stock quantities under those bins. So at any time, the stock people now, they go to A1 or G2. And it made their job a lot easier than hunting a huge warehouse for these products when somebody orders something. Because they were getting the orders and then left with that, how do I find this in this warehouse, this one widget. So again, learning that you can add additional functionality to it to make the owner's life easier and make admin easier. What happens when an order comes in until the product is shipped or delivered? Again, when you learn that process, you'll understand what shipping costs, maybe ancillary packaging costs. We recently did a site that they ship beads. Well, by going into the warehouse and again learning, I figured out I learned bees can't go on planes; they die. Honey can, and there's certain types of, depending on the type of bee, there's certain boxing and the costs different. And they were like, we're making money on shipping. I'm like, no, not when you're figuring in all your packaging costs. So I had them go through a detailed process of figuring out what packaging cost it was per product so that they could try to recoup some of that money instead of losing it. So again, when you understand the process, you can come up with a better solution. What happens from the administrative side, reporting? The customer's pushing it to QuickBooks. I've had a couple sites where all of a sudden they're going, how do I get this to QuickBooks? Do I need to export? What happens? What reporting are they needing? What reporting is their CPA needing? WooCommerce itself doesn't come with a lot of reporting, but there are add-on plugins you can add that have detailed reporting and export features. So sometimes that helps bring that in so that they're happy and they can use the solution you provided. And then also, what are the goals for the next year? Making sure they're realistic. We quoted out a website not too long ago, and we realized really quickly that they, within the first month, wanted to make $10,000. They didn't make $10,000 the whole year. So they had very unrealistic expectations, and they said they were desperate for it. We backed away from that proposal It was very unrealistic. They didn't have any other marketing schedule, marketing dollars scheduled. And we realized that we couldn't win. And they needed to hear that, because a lot of other developers were like, yeah, we'll build it, the people will come. It's not quite like that. There has to be other marketing. And I was one of the first people to actually walk them through that. And I think they had somebody else end up building it, but at least they were kind of aware that you don't want to get that call after the first month of building something. We're not getting any orders. What's happening? It's not working. It is working. You just have no other marketing dollars. And then ask for the budget. Don't be afraid to ask for the budget of the site. If they say it's $1,000 and you're thinking the minimum budget's going to be $3,000, $4,000, you either need to come up with a different solution for them. They need to maybe be educated more. Maybe they need to plan more for it. But don't be afraid to ask. And one thing we use a lot of times is for planning. You may decide to do this in phases if your budget doesn't encompass every feature you want. So if you can't give us a budget, we don't know how to break it. Because it's usually price shop otherwise. Even if you deliver it in person, you'll have to pick them up off the floor. And I prefer to get every question we're going to go over before I give the client an estimate, which many of our prospects don't like, because they don't know the answers to many of the questions we're going to go over. But I can't adequately walk into a proposal or a project if, for example, they don't know how they're going to ship, or they don't know how many. I can't price something if I don't know how many products with options and how I'm going to be getting these. So I like to have all the answers up front. And if I can get most of them and they're still wondering about it too, I'll put a huge disclaimer in our proposal saying this is what I'm expecting. Anything else may vary the price. And I make sure I go over that when I give them the proposal, that we have a conversation about those pieces. Because I want them to remember later when I come to them, because we try to stay firm on our pricing. I want them to understand, remember this talk we had on this piece? That's the reason you didn't have your answers to us. Or this is going to cost more because of this reason. But some of these things, how many products? How many variations of products? And a lot of this is on one of the sheets here too. How am I going to get that product information? Am I going to have to import? I've had everything from, here's the wholesale company's sites. I want you to pull down all the information. Can you copy it? And we'll tell you which product. To, I'm going to give it to you in a Word document. I can't get it into an Excel, so I can't even import it. To an Excel, but nothing is formatted right. We still have to spend a lot of time importing. And then also with the images, what about images, image sizes, things like that. So you kind of have to need to know that in the options, because you may have conditional checking in your product variations. We recently did one where it was like a sign. So if they chose this size sign, these were the options that showed. If they chose this size sign with this option, these showed. So there's a lot of conditional logic, which is a whole different pricing on my side, because I had to use WooCommerce with a Gravity Form plugin add-in to get that functionality for that. And they needed to supply all that, and they were looking at me like a deer in a headlight, like, how am I going to get that? And I'm like, we need it because I can't make this up. It's not my business. What's the shop owner expecting on product detail? I recently helped a developer. She did an estimation for someone. She just assumed the client wanted the default layout. Well, when it came time to deliver that product, the client was mad. They wanted it in a different order, different format, looking different. And she thought with WooCommerce, you could just go in and click some buttons and change something, not realizing it was going to be a custom child template almost for WooCommerce. And she had not priced that in at all. So understanding, showing them, even if it's canned examples, do you like this or do you like that? To get an idea of what you're looking at. How many product categories? This doesn't matter as much unless, what happens when they click on the shop button? Do they want to see all products displayed in a certain order, alphabetic, most recent, most popular, or do they want to see categories? If they want to see categories, now you need category photos. Do they expect a drop-down menu on the side, or do they expect kind of what's called an active search. So when you start typing, it starts looking for things in the database. What are they expecting when you come to that? It's very important to find that out so you know how to code it. And then get into even more specifics. Checkout process. What are they expecting? Are they expecting where when they come to the final page, there's kind of an add-on leftover process, you know, that $5 price to buy something additional? Are they expecting you to check terms and conditions? Are they expecting maybe a couple of fields like how did you hear about us? Any kind of products you want. You'll hear all kinds of additional questions at checkout. Shipping. This is the biggest killer in my brain between this and products that can curtail an e-commerce site. I expect very detailed costs for packaging, what type of rate they're expecting. Shipping can be anywhere from a flat rate shipping taking under an hour to set up. We did a table rate where it had every state involved that took us like 12 to 14 hours to code in. And then they came back with second changes on that because they didn't like it when they were testing it. So I expect very detailed shipping, and this is many times where I see the deer in the headlights. All they know is what they've been doing. They take it down to the post office or they take it here. They don't know their average shipping rates. They don't know that they have to weigh every product to get by weight. What do you mean I have to weigh every product? I have 400 products. If you want to go by weight, we have to have the weight of every product. And then you get into packaging. How many pieces can fit in the box? What size boxes are you sending? With some of these, you can get into configurations on that. When we were doing the bees one, there were certain products that had to be shipped alone and others that could have, like, be boxed with other things. So we had to have multiple shipping classes depending on what they were ordering and what was in the cart. Knowing all that, you can kind of figure out what you have to figure out on the back end. But this is the hardest one, and sometimes you have to sit down with a client or a store owner and walk through different scenarios. Are you talking flat rate, where there's this option, and they're just going, I don't know. And then planning that. If you're getting into weight, don't give them a deadline if they have 400 products to weigh and they don't have the weights of them. It's not your responsibility as a developer to weigh all those products, but they have to be given the adequate time to get that to you. And many times you can import that when you do your initial import. Last thing you want to do is import your products, and then they give you shipping weights differently. And then you may be re-importing everything. So trying to get everything in one swoop, again, save time, save cost. Because if we implement one shipping and then you change it, the time is still spent on the other. So it can now be, instead of 10 hours, it could be 15 hours because we spent 5 hours implementing something else. Sales tax. I make sure I tell them up front I am not a CPA. They need to check with whoever is their CPA. If they need to charge sales tax, it maybe they need to charge in Georgia. It gets funny when you have multiple states involved, or a warehouse in one state and your residents in Georgia, but they need to talk to their CPA and follow that. It can be as simple as a flat rate, or you may have to bring in there's a plugin out there called TaxJar, and there's a girl locally here, and they can handle a lot of your tax reporting, and they're a phone call away, so once the CPA gives the information, you can log into that and see, does it jive, and they create the quarterly reports and all that stuff that you need. Merchant processor. Is it authorized PayPal, Stripe? One of the biggest problems I run into with this is somebody says, I have a merchant processor, it's through my bank. The last 4 sites we've built that have used the bank's merchant processor, they've had to go back to the bank and tell them that the processor they had did not have a WooCommerce plugin. And they had to upgrade to authorized.net. Many banks, when they give them merchant services, they give them the bank flavor, they don't give them authorized.net. So it's an additional charge. So I let the client know that up front. They need to check with their bank if they want to use authorized.net. Do they really have that activated, and are they paying for that? Because there can be some differences at the bank. SSL is critical. My biggest thing is choose a hosting company that has Let's Encrypt, and it's there, and there's no additional charges, and you just put it in for your sites. It makes it easier. Even if you're using PayPal, I would not do an e-commerce site without an SSL. and discount and coupon codes. It's amazing to me how many different types of coupons that I've got into situations where they say, I want to do this as a coupon code. And I'm going, that doesn't come with WooCommerce. WooCommerce is shipping. Remember, WooCommerce itself is free. There's add-ons to make it more robust. So the one that comes with WooCommerce is pretty basic. So I always ask for examples from the client. Can you tell me some examples you'd like to use for discount codes if you're going to use them? Because there's different plugins out there that do different things. And that way I can find the right plugin, again, that meets that need. Because the first time they try to use it and they're like, it doesn't do this, you're going to get the phone call and they're going to think the whole site's broke. They immediately think the whole thing is broke. And it's just, it doesn't have that add-on. And then we get to more. Are they expecting integration with QuickBooks? There's some third-party APIs through Zapier, and there's another one out there that do it automatically, but isn't something they expect. I try to talk them out of this right away. I give them the pricing, and let's get going and get live for a month or two before we do this. Because you can integrate it where you're integrating products, you integrate SKUs, or you're just moving over customer data. So it just depends on what they're looking at. Again, I mentioned this earlier, what administrative reports are they expecting? There may be something special that they need to report to whoever. Stock management's huge. Are they expecting it? Are they, and if they are, what are they expecting? There's some, again, there's some add-on plugins for WooCommerce that do more sophisticated stock management with multiple levels and things like that. You just have to figure out what when they say stock management, but they want to keep inventory. Find out what they need. Have them talk about it. Even ad nauseum, then you can kind of pick up when you're looking at plugins, is it doing what they need? Wholesale retail. And don't always assume it's one level of wholesale. WooCommerce has some great wholesale retail. There's a basic flavor where you get one wholesale and one retail price. And then there's another one you can have multi-tier wholesale, like bronze, silver, gold, or something like that. The thing to keep in mind in this, unless you write a custom import, all of the WooCommerce imports that are out there do not allow you to put it on a product sheet and import it. So you either have to manually enter it or write some custom code to import it into the product database. So if there's wholesale pricing, I have not found an import yet. We've had to write custom code to SQL statements to import those in. So again, yeah, they want it. How are you going to get that data in? If there's 5,000 products, you really want to manually enter 5,000 wholesale prices. There's about 3 clicks to get them in.
You're saying if I achieve the silver level and I get a 15% discount, I'm looking at a product price, right, that it automatically just shows me that. And
there's some out there that do 1%, and there's some that you have to manually type in, it's $5 versus $8. So depending on the product, again, you have to ask the questions. Are they expecting 1% in there? Or are they expecting $1? Or could it be both? And then getting that data in is another whole question. Unless I've had some cases where I tell them what it's going to cost, and I separately price out what it's going to take for us to write a script to import all of those. And the client has elected to manually do that themselves to save the money. Again, letting them know what's going on is always the best bet. Integration with Amazon, eBay, there's all that stuff out there. Again, I would probably hold off to make sure everything's running smoothly before you get into that. There's purchase order options. You may have wholesale customers where you want to do purchase orders for or something like that. Export options. Some people want to export them and then manually import them into QuickBooks, or they want to export their orders and look at them in an Excel file, or send them to their CPA or something like that. And then I mentioned this earlier, conditional options on product. It's good to find out that up front. If I order a 8x11 item, these are my options, versus a 13x17 item, these are my options. You start getting into conditional logic, and it's very easy to do, but you need to know up front. Okay, these are just some helpful hints. Once you come up with your pricing and you give it, or you're ready to deliver it, talk with the shop owner. It's amazing to me how many times I've sat down going over a pricing options, And the store owner was shocked how much a certain option was going to cost, like shipping. They wanted to do this elaborate shipping or all this stuff. And I said, but hold it. If we scale it down and do it this way instead of the way you want it, here's the pricing on what you want, it's going to save you this much money. I didn't realize that wish feature was so expensive. And again, you can have these conversations, again, because it may be culture, it may be sticker shock. Here's what you recommend, here's what I recommend if you can't afford that right now to bring down the cost. And if many shop owners are they'll say, I need this, but this piece can wait, or can we add that later? Yes, we can add that later. Remember this is more for developers, but remember, WooCommerce itself is free. But when you're determining shipping, it's the cost of the plugin. It's your time to install, customize, set it up, plus your testing time. I can spend 10 to 20 hours testing shipping alone if it's a table rate shipping and there's 50 states. Or they're sending me, many times I ask for previous orders from customers, and we'll try to mock it through to see if we're close on shipping and stuff. That can take a lot of time. And that's my cost of that option. So again, many people forget the testing time, or I've seen people forget that it takes time to customize, set it up, maybe CSS it to make it look like the design, things like that. And make sure everybody knows the annual costs and they're discussed. And that prices can vary. I have a WooCommerce plugin that went up $30 this last year just because of all the updates with, Woo and everything else. That's a lot more features. The client's like, well, you should eat that cost. No, it's not my plugin. It's, if you don't want it, that's fine. We can try to find a different plugin. It's going to cost, more time to set it up, but that's just the cost of the plugin. But they need to know of that cost, and as a developer, you shouldn't have to eat that unless you have that figured into a maintenance cost. Make sure your plugins are responsive. I know that sounds so basic, but there's a lot of plugins, even outside of WooCommerce, that are not responsive. I installed one that allowed videos into a gallery on the side in WooCommerce. It wasn't responsive. He said it was responsive. The developer said it was responsive. When we put it in, I contacted the developer. He gave me his definition of responsive, and I was like, well, that's not responsive. Luckily, he made a few changes for us on the fly because other people were complaining about it. But make sure they are responsive. The site should be responsive. And make sure they work within your theme. I've had a couple where I've kind of come in to fix sites, and it wasn't that the plugin wasn't working, it was the plugin didn't work with that theme they put in. I found a different plugin that did the same thing, and all of a sudden it worked magically. And be specific in your proposals, but don't give your architecture away. I learned early on where I gave everything, this is a plugin I'm going to use, this is how I'm going to implement it, and then people could just price shop that, and somebody would do it cheaper because I did all the work and got all the questions. But be specific enough that the owner, whoever you're building this for, understands what's happening and what's specific, so that if things do change, which they might, that you can say, this is what we talked about, now we're changing scope. And it may be a small change if you're not to that point, or you may have implemented that already and there's an additional cost to do that. So just be specific on that. And also remember, once it's built, if they don't, maintenance and support is critical, especially on an e-commerce. And at least for us, if somebody has an e-commerce, it costs more money for us to do all the plugin updates and all the maintenance, because we may have to test shipping again every time we do updates and everything else. So the cost for maintenance and security is more because of that. There's more things playing in the background. And it is essential with the updates. I'm sure everybody here knows how many updates happen on a monthly basis. I know we use Managed WP and WordFence for our two main plugins for everything. And I really like those. But again, it's really hard on that. And I try not to take on an e-commerce site without them agreeing to a maintenance package up front, because it's going to start breaking and we're going to get the calls. And there's not going to be a backup, and it's going to become a nightmare. And again, the sheets, I want to leave enough time. These 2 sheets are also available on our website if you want to download copies of, especially of the Excel file. I'll explain this. The Excel file, I use this when I'm pricing out an e-commerce site. I'll come right down non-e-commerce plugins, costs, and everything e-commerce once I'm figuring it out. And it kind of just calculates it for me. And I may have 2, sometimes I have to play with it. I may have 3 shipping plugins when I'm trying to figure out which one is going to work. But I can put the URLs of some of the plugins in here, so I don't have to remember and cache or whatever what I did. And then I try to estimate for the client sometimes the renewal cost year 2, 3, stuff like that, because it becomes important because they're planning their next year and they might not realize there's annual costs with them.
Can I jump in? One question there. So tell me how you handle the purchasing of those extensions. Who's paying for them? Who's account are they in? Sounds like maybe you purchase them, you have them, and then you just bill them for that cost.
Yes. That's the way I do it. 2 times that I've had the client do it, they've turned, for whatever reason, they didn't realize what it was, and they've turned off the subscription within the year. Yeah. And then things all of a sudden aren't renewing and aren't updating, and it's kind of more hassle. So I just have part of our agreement annually, this is your cost to do this. And again, the update of the plugin and the updates are in the maintenance agreement. The purchase of the plugins are separate, and I kind of make sure that that's noted in the contract.
And then what happens if they were leaving? Okay, you've been great, we want to go to a different provider. What happens with those plugins? Many
of the plugins, if you contact the developers, they'll let you transfer ownership of them. There's a couple that don't. The plugins are pretty cheap, but they don't get any discount many times year 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Right.
So they could just buy a new subscription when that runs out under that new name. They're not losing or saving any money. I only know like 2 plugins where you get like a discounted, year 2 and 3 kind of thing. So that's kind of how we handle it. It keeps things in-house. I don't have to spend a lot of time getting a hold of them when things fall through the cracks and stuff. Yeah, I kind of look at it and I kind of gear it based on, what does it entail? If it's, we have one that's kind of custom WooCommerce. We had to manually really play with it for some stock management and stuff. That maintenance is a lot more than just somebody that has WooCommerce with 2 plugins. Correct. And when it gets into any custom coding, even if it's within WordPress, this isn't just WooCommerce, I try to have that talk with the client up front that your maintenance costs are going to escalate a lot because we have to custom build something. We may have to have external files to make sure with an upgrade things are still there and things like that. Yeah, so I try to make sure of that.
Well, obviously, this is a very extensive process, and so when do you sell this as a charge for this as a service, architecture, versus just baked in or part of the proposal?
There's 2 times I've charged. One, the client wanted me out for about a day and a half, 2 days at their warehouse, meeting with different people, and I told them there was going to be a charge. It was 2 days is kind of fun, but it was 2 days. The other time was when the client told me up front they were getting 3 or 4 other bids, and what happened is I was brought in like 2 or 3, 3rd or 4th person, I think it was. I was the only person to ask all these questions. Everybody else was design, what images you want. They didn't talk anything about e-commerce. And they called me back and they said, we'd like you to write up a detailed proposal, and we'd like to give it to the other 3 companies. I said, well, that's in order for me to do that, I'd be happy to do that consulting, but you're going to have to pay for my work on this because I'm not going to give you know, the architecture away to somebody else and let them underbid me, is what it would become. So I did that. We ended up losing bids, but I made some decent money just on setting up the architecture, and it was actually a pretty simple system. Just nobody asked a question. What they did is they took mine, went back to the other 3 people and said, hey, we had somebody give us this. Your estimate doesn't include these things. Can you tell us what it costs? And of course, I got underbid right away, but we got some money out of it. So.
Question I had about is you're using Let's Encrypt for your SSL. Do we have any issues with PCI compliance and authorized issues?
No, not actually, no. And the other thing, if you're using authorized.net, most developers don't realize you have to have a returns policy. You have to have a privacy policy. Even if you don't have returns, it has to say, we do not have returns. You have to have a separate returns, a shipping, and a privacy page, or they will hold your money. Most people do not realize that. I've had clients argue with me, we don't have returns. Well, then let's create a page with a pretty picture and say, we do not offer returns, and say it nice.
I have talked to WP Engine about what's in front of e-commerce, and they said that, and of course, it's just the first line customer service. They said they had no issue, that there should not be. Yeah.
It's
pretty much how definitive that is.
Pretty much Let's Encrypt is just the old shared SSL, but it's unique. You know, it's kind of like a hybrid between the higher level.
You just don't get insurance like some of the paid ones.
That's 3 or 4 clients.
I mean, PCI is a whole different ball game if you have to go through all of their checks and, you know, stuff like that. There may be other issues just related to, you know, how they're capturing the data and how they're handling it. I've had some clients that had issues, not from the website, but what they did with the products and the data once it got to that point that it didn't meet PCI compliance. Why did you come?
I could just ask these over dinner or something, but no, they're coming to mind. So with Google's emphasis on speed coming in July 2018, there's going to be just an update or a change, but it'll be about speed and performance. At what point, how do you decide whether to go from shared hosting platform to bigger share, to a dedicated server? I know it's a math problem, basically, but how do you address like performance issues?
I mean, number one, if I'm not offending it, I charge more if somebody says they're using Google for their hosting.
Okay.
I'm GoDaddy. I have a certain upcharge. I charge quite a bit. In fact, I'm thinking after my experience yesterday of charging an upcharge with HostGator.
Any of those? Blue Stream Host, that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, I had.
Flywheel or your something.
Yeah, I had a 4-hour install that should have taken a half hour yesterday. Because they just couldn't. Every time they made a change, it was wrong.
We've had some sites where we put them on a virtual server, dedicated server, or some just a faster version of.
And some of that is honestly, usually with hosting, and depending on how many products. Again, if somebody has 4 products or under 10 products, shared should work. When you start getting more, we had a client for the longest time, they had 400 products. They were on a shared platform, and they couldn't afford a dedicated platform. They couldn't afford anything more until they got their sales up. So we had a transition there, and we finally moved them, and they were shocked. Again, they got more orders, the speed of the order, but I also, with what type of hosting, we had a personal relationship with one of the hosting companies, and there were some issues when they came to the checkout and they clicked authorize, or they clicked, the final payment, it would hang and people would get scared and close the browser. Well, a bunch of research we found is we talked with the hosting company, and I had them try adding some memory to the site, which a lot of these companies won't do for you. It was night and day. That site, I mean, it was like instantaneous setting process. So again, having the right relationship and figuring out what's wrong can matter. Some of that sometimes is the images aren't optimized. The client's now uploading images and they're, you know, off their phone, where it goes.
When it takes the bill, like what we're looking at too, is only hosting on PHP site or something like that. Because it's amazing, even at 5.3, 5.5, how slow it can be at 7.
But you have to be careful. One of the things I ran into yesterday at HostGator was one of the plugins. This client, we did some of the configuration and they did the rest. One of the plugins was not compatible with 7.0. And that was, once I turned that off, HostGator still had issues, but they were by default like 5.5 or something. And when you went into the configuration and you clicked update version, it wasn't keeping it. You know, it wasn't taking it. And the guy didn't seem to understand what I was talking about. Yeah. We personally like SiteGround. SiteGround I like a lot. A couple years ago, I wouldn't have told you that. Very quick. I even have some dedicated servers there that I really like. They're quick. They're fast on response time. They offer Let's Encrypt. The control panel is easy. Again, if I can get as many there when I'm migrating sites live, it's the same process every time, so it's easy. I thought this HostGator thing was going to be easy yesterday, but there was just problems with the setup of the hosting account itself that was causing issues. I couldn't put a test HTML page out there and have it render. So we like SiteGround a lot. It's economical. Again, it's economical and stuff like that, and they still have different flavors of hosting. I would not use the WordPress managed hosting. I would not recommend that on any of the platforms as a developer. We have a site right now that we just took over that they're on DreamHost stuff that she's getting timeouts on number of executions. She's getting all this stuff that she shouldn't be getting with a site with her traffic. They can cause you some problems when you start getting more and they start limiting you and stuff like that, you know.
She started getting notices.
Yeah, so we're moving. Which means they're probably starting to overload the servers and stuff like that. So this client, we're moving her. She's like, I've had this site here for 5 years and never ran into this, and I'm getting all these emails and they're threatening to shut down my site today. And hosting does matter. I always tell people, they'll be like, I got free hosting at GoDaddy. Well, if you want to use GoDaddy, here's my upcharge to move it to GoDaddy. That's more than I think. It takes me a lot more time to set up there and play there and get things to work there. So I just kind of play with it that way.
I tell my clients, like, it's like a sliding scale from you take full responsibility for security and maintenance and all of that, and you can get that for $4 a month. But you take total responsibility. And then as I move them up the scale to like, now this is fully managed for you, totally secure. Now where on there do you feel you fall? Oh, we want.
And we've gotten out of, we don't do emails, and I mean, this is a total side topic, but we don't do emails with hosting anymore. I will not spend a Saturday when they're at AT&T with their new phone trying to set up their email or whatever.
They want to set up a 365.
Yeah, so I tell them I would recommend hosting. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, and I separate it. I don't care what hosting they're with. Office 365 is popular. Is one that seems to work, and again, if they're managing their own domain in that, I try to factor in some cost in there for me to set up all those records and stuff. Because a lot of times they expect you to manage their domain even if they bought it, and they don't realize it takes time to do all that. So I always add on that cost in there as well. I don't necessarily build that out separately, but I kind of think as I'm coming up with my pricing, how much time does that take? Because when you add in your whole project time, you don't want to be in the hole that, you know, you're losing money. It's not even your business kind of thing.
So fulfillment houses are another sort of wild card. But, so for some businesses, it makes sense to purchase all these products and stored in a warehouse, and then the orders come off the website. And so there's some sort of API that says from the website, send it over to this fulfillment house, and they have people that are picking it on the shelf. But
pretty much, you don't need an API. You can just change or add. We have one that's a coffee roaster. He's in Canton, and his roaster's south side of Atlanta. We just have a copy of the order go to both places. And then they have a separate system that they recorded in, and he can log in to see the status and the shipping order of that. You run into oddities. This is where the sales tax and the shipping costs and stuff like that can run into, because let's say the headquarters is in Georgia, but they have 2 distributing areas, one in Denver and one in New York. How do you determine shipping? You know, is it, you know, always the shipping's out of, that you're calculating it out of Georgia? What if they're shipping it from the Denver one to Alabama? Again, that's a different shipping cost than if it's being shipped from New York to New Jersey. So you get into all, that's why you have to get all kind of the details in here. Where is shipping happening? What's happening behind the scenes? How is this all going to be configured? And then again, where's the sales tax? Is it the one place, or you know, is it the fulfillment place that has to? Again, that's a CPA question. But you have to get into that as you're configuring it, because you're pretty much putting in the rules of engagement behind this e-commerce site. You have to know what rules you need to put in place to make sure it's working properly. Because if they get a huge tax bill or tax liability, then you're going to have problems.
How do you know when you expect to switch to your own e-commerce versus Etsy if you don't have more than 20 products? Like, is it worth it?
Well, when you're dealing with Etsy, it's the same thing with Etsy, Amazon, anything like that. When you have a store within theirs, it's really good because you can get promoted, and Etsy has a lot more SEO juice out there, you know, versus Amazon getting yourself found out there. The problem is you're still within that mix. You're still one of, what's in your Etsy store, what kind of products?
So massage therapists, we have our own creams that we use that are natural and organic. Bath salts, you know, that we sell, and Epsom salts. Like salves. So if you have any bruises or cuts, salves that are natural.
So what's really good is if somebody typed in sea salts, you're going to come up with a mix someplace.
Yeah.
The bad thing is there may be a lot of competitors out there that you're competing against in Etsy or in Amazon, whatever it might be. So you need to figure out at what point, and it might be a sales trigger, where you need to have a separate website where you're only promoting your products and there's no competition on the same domain. And if Etsy lets you redirect, you may have your top sellers on Etsy, and then for more products, click here and go to your website and see all of your products. Again, it can sometimes save you money on Etsy or even Amazon if you just show your hot products or something you're pushing, and then direct them someplace else to see everything. So you can kind of play that. But again, type in sea salt, bath salt. What would entice me to choose? You have to ask yourself, what would make somebody entice you over anybody else in that list in Etsy that shows up? Yeah. You're branded by Etsy. So there'll come a point where you want to, again, be more branded. You want to have people just find your products and not be in the competition then. And again, it's not necessarily, a couple weeks ago, they came to me and they wanted WooCommerce, and based on their budget, based on their variables, I sent them to Shopify. I told them I could help configure Shopify. I can help set up Shopify. I can do everything. They didn't have a lot of money for maintenance. They didn't have, they had a very limited budget. Their products were very basic. Shipping was everything was very basic, and they had a very small budget. So I thought, just based on that, they couldn't afford the maintenance itself. there's other options out there that right at that point in their business honestly work just as well. I probably shouldn't say that in WooCommerce, but it's the best option for that business owner at that time. I don't want to force something in. I recently looked at a website and it was information only, but the developer they hired only knew Drupal. And Drupal, if you don't know anything about the back end of Drupal, it is not a good platform for just info. And they forced this client to learn some HTML and all kinds of stuff because the only thing this client knew was Drupal, which is another kind of e-commerce platform out there. But they weren't using anything e-commerce. They weren't selling it. Because I kept saying, where's your product? Why do we have to have products? I said, because you have Drupal. No, that's the only thing the developers knew. Again, it wasn't the best fit for that client. It was the best fit for that developer. And the client didn't know any different.
We should do a meetup on when WooCommerce is not the option. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Like I said, the one I just went in and fixed, they had all of these gyrations and all this stuff, and I'm like, really? It's just like 3 options, and then it's the same price for each option, and I created a gravity form plugin, and an hour and a half later, they were ready to go.
I would imagine, you know, number of sales and the sales volume would be the determining factor. It's kind of like when you go Ecommerce versus Ecommerce.net.
Yeah. And also,
yeah, and the branding issue, and there's other factors.
And also, at some point, isn't there a situation where WooCommerce becomes not the platform for you anymore, and you should be going to Magento or something like that?
Yeah, and again, Magento can start, and the average site Magento probably can start $10,000 or more for even just a couple products. And it's very, maintenance costs go through the roof because it's pain in the butt to update the back end if you know Magento and do updates and stuff. And it's not like WordPress where you miss 3 or 4 just kind of updates. It's like Drupal, you have to do every update and test every update as you go. So it can really, yeah. And there's the free version and there's the professional version. A plugin, an average plugin for Magento can be, the last one I built, the cheapest plugin was $350. And all it did was add a WYSIWYG editor to a box. Wow.
And the developer community is not as robust, so it's not as expensive.
But again, there's different times to do it. There's a government site that the contract required using Magento that I bid on. So you may, and high level security. So you may run into situations where you're brought into a different type of platform you're not familiar with because of that. Drupal's being used in government contracts as well as using e-commerce. I try to stay away from those because I don't want to do much Magento. I mean, much Drupal. But
I have a friend who's Magento only developer. Yeah.
David?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one too.
And he's there, yeah, it's great for him because he's always in demand because there's not a lot of.
Mine just doubled his rates on maintenance because of all of the changes coming with Magento. So again, there's different platforms for different options. Again, it's not one size fits all. I try to look at it, like I said, with the one, I looked at their price, I looked at what they had, what they could afford. They couldn't afford maintenance. And I said, you know, for what you need, where your business is right now, let's go here and try it. And in a year, you know, stay in touch. We can upgrade you, or we can try to add features on, you know, keep in touch, or I can even help you set this all up. And so it kind of went like that.
Well, thank you, Rhonda. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
It's right there.
Yeah. And if there's any other, you know, like where you're going to be, if you're going to be, are you speaking at WordCamp?
No, I'm hoping to hang out with Daniel. Yeah. I'd rather probably hang out and talk.
No, you're not going to be at the t-shirt table.
I would be. That was fun. That was the most fun I've had. Yeah. I met more people hanging out at the t-shirt table with Daniel.
And what other services do you offer besides e-commerce?
Pretty much web development, internet marketing services, just, you know, analysis of websites, normal stuff that pretty much most of us offer.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.